What defines science? And why is observation alone not enough? Welcome to Popper for Everyone. Before we begin, who was Karl Popper? He was one of the most important philosophers of science in the 20th century, and he fundamentally changed how we think about science. In this video series, we'll explore Popper's main work, The Logic of Scientific Discovery. We'll start with Chapter 1, a survey of some fundamental problems. Because even here, Popper shows science doesn't begin with observation, but with an idea. So what exactly is science? How do we gain reliable knowledge about the world? And why isn't it enough to simply collect a huge number of observations? In this video, we'll look at a famous answer by Karl Popper. In the 1930s, he rethought the nature of science and cleared up a mistake that had persisted for centuries: induction. According to Popper, science consists of two steps. First, we propose an idea, a theory or hypothesis. Second, we try to test it. It doesn't matter where the idea comes from, whether from observation, a lucky guess, or a flash of insight. What matters is, can we put it to the test? Many people believe, if I observe something often enough, I can generalize from it. For example, I've seen 1,000 white swans, so all swans must be white? Wrong, says Popper. Even after 1,000 observations, a single black swan could suddenly appear. These kinds of conclusions are called inductive inferences, but they are not logically justified. And this is where the so-called problem of induction begins. Many philosophers have tried to solve this problem with the principle of induction, a rule that justifies inductive reasoning, but Popper shows it doesn't work. Why not? Because if the principle of induction is itself based on experience, you'd have to prove that induction has often worked in the past. But to do that, you'd be using induction again. For example, people say induction is the best method, because it has proven most useful in the past. But that's another inductive claim. You use experience to justify trusting experience. This leads to an infinite regress, a chain without a beginning, where every proof depends on another, and that one also needs to be proven. Some then say, well, let's just assume the principle of induction is valid. But that's a problem. When you believe something without justification, it's called dogmatic. In philosophy, this is known as a priorism. You claim a principle is valid from the outset without giving a reason. Even modern approaches using probability don't help, because probability is also based on experience. Which brings us right back to induction. That's why Popper says, forget induction, we need a different method. Popper's proposal is radical and simple. We don't try to confirm theories, we try to refute them. This is called falsification. If a theory fails a test, it is falsified and rejected. If it passes a test, it is corroborated, but not proven. For Popper, science means propose ideas, test them, fail, improve. An endless process. For Popper, science is objective when its claims can be tested by anyone. It doesn't matter how convinced someone is, what matters is whether the claim is testable. I believe it's true is not enough. Only what can be intersubjectively tested belongs to science. But not all meaningful statements are scientific. For example, everything happens for a higher reason. That may sound profound, but it's not testable. Popper calls such statements metaphysical. They can't be verified or falsified. One might now think, so that's just nonsense then, But that's not what Popper says. On the contrary, I do not even go so far as to assert that metaphysics has no value for empirical science, for it cannot be denied that along with metaphysical ideas which have obstructed the advance of science, there have been others which have aided it. And looking at the matter from the psychological angle, I am inclined to think that scientific discovery is impossible without faith in ideas which are of a purely speculative kind and sometimes even quite hazy, a faith which is completely unwarranted from the point of view of science and which, to that extent, is metaphysical. For Popper, science is a game with error. We make bold proposals, we test them rigorously, we discard them if necessary. Only those who expose their ideas to criticism are doing real science. Knowledge is never certain, but it can prove its worth. To sum up, science begins with ideas, not with observation. It progresses through refutation, not confirmation. A theory is scientific if it can be falsified. Objectivity means intersubjective testability, and metaphysics is not nonsense, but it's not science. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that it gave you a new perspective on science. If you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you next time.